What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you The Legend of Korra Season 1, Episode 9 review entitled Out of the Past. And I am not happy with this week's episode. And just like I said yesterday with that Legend of Korra discussion video, as a reviewer, I have an obligation to praise a series when it does well, but criticize it when it doesn't do well. In this week's episode, two thumbs down. Not just one, two thumbs down. The pacing. The pacing of this series is too fast. The creation of conflict and its resolution is happening too fast. And let me just tell you, from my perspective, this show just got a lot more boring. And I'm going to do something a little bit different with this episode review because I'm actually going to break the summary and the analysis into two parts. So first it's going to be the summary, then it's going to be the analysis. And also this episode was a little bit weird because there were two plot lines instead of the traditional one. So there was a sort of divergent narrative, divergent narratives being told here. So I'll deal with each plot line one at a time. I won't confuse you by trying to integrate them into one. So first, let's start with Tarlok. The episode begins with where Tarlok blood bends Korra into this containment unit. It's basically a metal box, and when he comes outside of, basically he's in the basement of what appears to be a log cabin, and when he comes outside the log cabin, you get this panoramic view, and you can clearly see that they are in the wilderness. I mean, Korra is completely isolated. And I think the commentator mentioned this at the beginning of the episode where he said Tarlok has taken the Avatar somewhere far, far away from Republic City. And he was right, because she's in the wilderness. And another thing you must notice is that Tarlok obviously had this planned out as a last-ditch effort. Because otherwise, you know, him having a log cabin with the metal box in it wouldn't make much sense. So he had to have had this planned out beforehand as a last ditch effort. And going into this episode, and especially seeing this opening scene, I was thinking, yes, thumbs up, great, because now we can kill two birds with one stone. We can get what appears to be the backstory on these Yakone visions, and at the same time, we can finally get a scene where Korra is allowed introspection, and through that introspection, character development. But after Tarlok leaves her in this log cabin in the wilderness, he returns to Republic City and does what a lot of you speculated that he would do, which was he tried to frame Amon in the Equalist. And so he plants evidence. He plants weapons, the taser gloves, one of those things that the Equalists use to tie people up. And this is where his sort of psychopathic tendencies comes in. He takes one of the taser gloves and shocks himself with it to simulate injuries as if he was trying to fight off the Equalists. Crazy, I know. And he basically sends everybody on the wild goose chase looking for Korra. Meanwhile, Lin Beifong breaks Team Avatar out of prison, and they team up with Tenzin to try and find the Equalist hideout so they can try and find out where the Equalists are supposedly keeping Korra. And of course, Lin Beifong has some ulterior motives. It's not that she doesn't want to help them find the Avatar, but she also wants to find those captured men that were lost a couple of episodes back. So they figure that, well, we think that Amon and the Equalists are hiding out in some underground tunnels. So they start searching for underground facilities, and they stumble upon some Equalists, and they follow them inside one of these underground tunnels that leads to the Equalist underground facility. And it's amazing. I mean, the Equalists, they don't just have an underground facility. They have an underground transportation system. They actually have a facility. I mean, so this lets you in on the sort of cunning and genius of Amon. I mean, he's firmly committed to building an Equalist movement. That's what Amon is trying to do. So it's not just an underground facility, it's an underground complex. And so what happens is they eventually, Team Avatar, Tenzin and Lin Beifong, they eventually find the captured men, and as a lot of you suspected, Amon did take away their bending permanently. And then after that, they try and find Korra, but they realize that Korra isn't there. And that's the first time they realize that they've been sent on a wild goose chase by Tarlok. And they make their escape from this underground facility, and then they head back to the city hall. So everybody goes back to City Hall, and this is when they confront Tarlok. And Tarlok realizes the jig is up. So what he does is he blood bends everybody into unconsciousness. And he heads back to where where he has Korra, hidden. And guess who shows up to greet him? None other than our boy Amon. And this is where things get really crazy. So a fight ensues. So Amon has brought with him some Equalists, and a fight ensues between Amon and the Equalists and Tarlok. And Tarlok is able to defeat the Equalists. He's not able to defeat Amon, but he's able to bloodbend the Equalists, but he cannot bloodbend Amon. Whoa. Whoa. And the dialogue for this scene was just absolutely perfect. And Stephen Bloom, goodness gracious, his voice is magnetic. It just radiates power and authority. So Tarlok is trying to bloodbend Amon, and he says, "What are you?" And Amon says, "I am the solution." Wow. Woof. Very good dialogue there, and very good voice acting from Stephen Bloom. But anyway, Amon proceeds to debend, which is what I'm calling it now. He proceeds to debend Tarlok. And so now Tarlok has been taken out of commission. And after Tarlok has been taken out of commission, Amon, it seems like his plan now is to really take Korra hostage this time. But Korra is able to escape from the Equalists. She's able to get away and make her way back to Republic City, where she's rescued by Tenzin and Team Avatar and all of that good stuff. The other plot line in this episode dealt with the resolution of the Yakone subplot. So while Korra was inside that metal box, she finally gets in touch with her spiritual side. And I have to say that this was very bad character development. Oh, very, very bad character development. So this whole season, Korra has been struggling with meditation, which is part of the reason why she's been struggling with her airbending. She's been struggling with her spiritual side. I mean, this was something that was told to us from the very first episode. She excels at the physical aspects of bending, but not so much at the spiritual aspects of bending. But she's inside this metal box. She closes her eyes, and literally within 5 seconds, she makes contact with Aang. Really? A person who was known to struggle with the physical aspects of bending closes her eyes for 5 seconds, and all of a sudden the Yakone backstory just comes rushing back to her. I mean, that's horrible character development. Really bad character development. And this is another thing about the pacing. The pacing is too fast. Character development is supposed to be about evolution of a character. The evolution of a character. And that evolution is supposed to happen over time. A person who's struggling with something can't get to the point, not a person, a character rather, and this applies for all narratives, for all stories. A character can't get to the point in a plot where they were previously unable to do something, and then all of a sudden they're able to do it. That can't happen. That's not good character development. I mean, that's just bad character development. So anyway, she has these visions, and she's made contact with Aang, and we finally get the backstory on Yakone. So basically, Yakone was a mafia boss who had a very, very unique talent for bloodbending. And his talent was that he was able to bloodbend at any time without having a full moon. So he was a very unique and very rare talent. And of course, what does any mafia boss do? He uses this blood bending talent to help him in his criminal enterprises. And eventually he was brought up on charges and convicted as a mafia boss, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But during that trial, after his conviction was read out by Sokka, he bloodbended everybody in the courtroom, and he tries to escape. But Aang eventually he catches. There's a sort of a little bit of a chase scene, and Aang catches up with him, and he takes his bending away. Now, here's the very, very, very interesting part of this series. Forget for a second that Amon seems to be resistant to bloodbending. Let's forget that for a second. This is very interesting. When when Aang energy bends Yakone and he takes away his blood bending, there's no bright lights. It's not at all like it was with Fire Lord Ozai. No more bright lights. When Amon takes away people's bending, there's no bright lights. You see where I'm going with this? So remember, the implication now is that Amon is blood bending. I mean, not blood bending, sorry, energy bending. Remember Guru Pathik? And remember when Guru Pathik taught Aang about the avatar state? He told him that the way to control the avatar state was to release the flow of chi in his body by opening up the chakra points, which were located on various points of the body. And one of those chakra points was the light chakra, which is located right here, right in the center of the forehead. And remember when Aang takes away Fire Lord Ozai's bending? He touches him right here on the light chakra, right in the center of the forehead. And every time Amon takes away somebody's bending, what does he do? Touches them right on the light chakra. So the implication now, there's a very, very strong possibility that Amon is in fact an energy bender. And this goes back to some episodes ago. Remember when Korra first told Tenzin about Amon being able to take away somebody's bending? And Tenzin got that look on his face. Well, that's impossible. Only Aang is supposed to have that ability. I think Tenzin knows something that he's not revealing to Korra. I still think that. But at this point, it seems like there's a very strong possibility that Amon is an energy bender. So he's resistant to blood bending, and he's an energy bender. He's very dangerous. Saying that Amon is very dangerous is a understatement. Ridiculous understatement. Wow. And we also find out that Tarlok is in fact the son of Yakone. So that's been squared away. So now let me get to the full analysis of this episode. And if you thought the criticism was heavy-handed before, this is about to get real heavy-handed now. Legend of Korra just got extremely boring for me. Extremely boring. And here's why. The writers have squandered the potential that they had. It's absolutely gone now. They've squandered the potential that they had for a complex political relationship between Amon, Korra, and Tarlok. Tarlok has been debended by Amon. He's now a non-factor. No threat whatsoever. He's probably being taken off the jail as we speak. So all the potential, the big opportunity that they had to develop a more complex relationship between these three characters, gone, squandered. And Amon, I think this is just bad writing for Amon's character. Up until this point, Amon was not a villain. And I said this on numerous occasions. He was not a villain. He was something more akin to either an anti-hero or a Byronic hero. I like to think that he was more in the vein of a Byronic hero. But be that as it may, it seems like now Amon is turning out to be the central villain of Legend of Korra. And it's clear that this is where this is going. If you've seen the previews, I won't spoil it for you, but if you've seen the previews for the season finale that came on right after this week's episode, it's clear that Amon is now going to take center stage as the villain of Legend of Korra. This is a terrible development. A terrible development, and here's why. Amon did two very, very, very important things for the Legend of Korra. The first thing that he did was he gave this series a sense of moral ambiguity. Yes, whether or not his methods were ethical was debatable, but he wasn't a villain. And now that he's a villain, that moral ambiguity is gone. He was forcing the viewer to ask very tough ethical questions about justice in the Avatar world. This series was about bender oppression of non-benders. But if he's a villain, those questions get thrown away. And what do we get? We get very, very uncomplicated black and white thinking. Amon is a villain, therefore he's evil, therefore Korra has to take him out. Just like with Fire Lord Ozai in the first series. Very, very uncomplicated ethical decision making for Korra now. Just black and white. Amon is a villain, he's evil, therefore I have to take him out. Not good at all for the writing here. The second very important thing that Amon did was that he was integral to the development of Korra. He was absolutely integral to her character development. And now what's happened? Korra's been let off the hook. Because if Amon is a villain, and if he's evil, then she doesn't have to address any of the political issues that were central to the narrative, and that Amon was very important in raising. She doesn't have to deal with those political issues. The only thing she has to say now is, well, Amon is a villain, and I have to take him out. Her character's been let off the hook. And it seems like now we're not ever going to see Korra address these political issues of benders versus non-benders. At least from the previews that we've seen. So in my eyes now, Korra is a very weak protagonist. Very weak protagonist. And besides calling somebody crazy, labeling somebody evil is the easiest way to dismiss them. And look at what's happened now. The Republic City Council has now been let off the hook. These were the same people who gave Tarlok the ability, the power, to institute discriminatory policies against non-benders. Is Korra now going to address that from the Republic City Council? No. You know why? Because now Amon is the central villain of the series. So she doesn't have to address that anymore. Tarlok is now a non-factor. And everybody can just forget how the Republic City Council gave him the power to institute discriminatory policies against non-benders. And this episode teaches us a very, very important lesson about narratives. The most important character in a narrative is not the protagonist. And I know that may seem odd, but it's not. The most important, for me anyway, the most important character in a narrative is the antagonist. Why? Because the antagonist is the only character that can force the protagonist to question their own beliefs. The antagonist is the means by which the protagonist experiences points of introspection, and through that introspection can develop as a character. That's why the antagonist is so important for a series. It's only by coming up against a very strong antagonist that forces the protagonist to question their own beliefs, which leads them to introspection, that they are able to evolve as a character. So now it looks like we're never going to get at least for me, I'm never going to get to see the character development that I wanted to see from Korra. So in my eyes now, she's a lame duck protagonist. Lame duck protagonist. And the Yakone subplot, how could they? I thought that we were going to get pieces of the Yakone subplot, but they spilled the beans. They absolutely spilled the beans. How could they have ended this subplot like this? This Yakone subplot was one of the most intriguing subplots of the entire series. And now Tarlock is a non-factor. They spilled the beans with Yakone. So, like I said, The Legend of Korra has just become a very, very boring series for me. Very cliche hero, very, very cliche situation where you have a hero versus a villain. And that to me is boring. And I think that the writers, I believe Brian and Mike are their names, they wrote down to their American audience. They had a very, very good opportunity to let the American public know that animation, that American cartoons are a legitimate medium. That it's a legitimate medium that you can use to tell complex ethical stories. And they dropped the ball here by reinstating this cliche hero versus villain thing. And to go off on a little bit of a tangent, this is the very same problem that I have with Star Wars. Even though I love Star Wars, the Clone Wars, the animated series, I love it. But they sidestep ethical questions just like The Legend of Korra has sidestepped these ethical questions. The most interesting question that Star Wars The Clone Wars raises is it ethical to create humans for the sole purpose of war? They sidestep that question. And just like they've done that with Star Wars The Clone Wars, Mike and Brian have sidestepped these ethical questions raised by Amon in the Legend of Korra series. And I'm just not happy with this week's episode. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day. And hopefully they find some way to redeem this series for me.